So, you want to own the moon. Before you laugh, consider 3 facts that have no business fitting together. A former used car salesman has made $12 million selling pieces of the moon he doesn't own. NASA, the most sophisticated space agency on Earth, once bought moon dirt for exactly $1 and paid the first installment with a check for 10 cents. And a startup in Seattle has already pre-sold hundreds of millions of dollars worth of a gas it has never touched, sitting on a surface it has never reached. By the end of this video, you'll understand how all 3 of those things are the same business. And you'll understand why the most valuable real estate in the solar system is legally worthless, while the dust sitting on top of it is worth $20 million a kilogram. Let's start with the obvious question. Can you actually buy land on the moon? The short answer is no. Nobody can. Not you, not Elon Musk, not the United States government. In 1967, at the height of the space race, the world's major powers signed the Outer Space Treaty. More than 100 countries have ratified it. The treaty says no nation can claim sovereignty over the moon or any other celestial body. Planting a flag means nothing. Landing first means nothing. The moon belongs to everyone, which is a polite way of saying it belongs to no one. In 1979, the United Nations tried to go further with something called the Moon Agreement, which would have declared lunar resources the common heritage of mankind and required any profits to be shared internationally. It was a spectacular failure. Not a single country capable of actually reaching the moon ever signed it. The message was clear. Nobody wanted to own the moon together. Everybody wanted to keep their options open. Which brings us to the man who read the 1967 treaty more carefully than anyone. In 1980, Dennis Hope was unemployed and going through a divorce in California. Looking for a way to make money, he noticed something about the Outer Space Treaty. It forbids nations from claiming the moon. It says nothing about individuals. So Hope filed a declaration of ownership for the moon, sent letters informing the United Nations, and when nobody wrote back to object, he opened a business called the Lunar Embassy and started selling acres. The price today is around $25 an acre. Hope picks each plot by closing his eyes and pointing at a lunar map. Over 4 decades, he claims to have sold more than 611 million acres to buyers in over 190 countries, including hundreds of celebrities and 3 former American presidents. At his peak, he claimed to be moving 1,500 properties a day. Total revenue, somewhere between $11 and $12 million. He once turned down a $50 million offer for a large chunk of his claimed territory. Legally, the deeds are worth nothing. Every space lawyer agrees on this. The treaty's silence on individuals doesn't create a right, it just creates a gap, and courts don't enforce gaps. What Dennis Hope actually sells is a piece of paper and a feeling. The remarkable part is that a piece of paper and a feeling turned out to be worth $12 million. But here's where the story turns. Because while Hope was selling fantasy ownership, the United States quietly built a legal path to the real thing. In 2015, Congress passed the Commercial Space Launch Competitiveness Act. Buried inside it is the sentence that created the entire lunar economy. American companies cannot own land on the moon, but they can own anything they extract from it. Dig it up, and it's yours. Luxembourg passed a similar law 2 years later, which is why a country with no rockets and no coastline became a headquarters for space mining companies. The distinction sounds like a technicality. It's actually the whole business. On the moon, ownership doesn't come from a deed. It comes from a machine that physically arrives and takes something. And in 2020, NASA proved it on purpose, with the strangest procurement contract in its history. The agency announced it would buy small amounts of lunar soil, called regolith, from private companies. 4 companies won. The Japanese firm iSpace bid $5,000. A California company bid $15,000. And a Colorado startup called Lunar Outpost bid $1. NASA's total shopping bill for material from another world, $25,000 and $1. The agency paid 10% upfront, which meant cutting Lunar Outpost a physical check for 10 cents. That 10-cent check is the most important document in this entire industry. NASA wasn't buying dirt. It could get dirt. It has hundreds of kilograms of Apollo samples sitting in a vault in Houston. It was buying a precedent. The moment a private company collected material on the moon and legally transferred ownership to a customer, the extraction rules stopped being a theory. A market existed. The price didn't matter. The transaction did. So the law works. Now comes the hard part and the expensive part: actually getting there. NASA runs a program called Commercial Lunar Payload Services with a spending ceiling of $2.6 billion. Instead of building its own landers, the agency pays private companies fixed prices to deliver cargo to the lunar surface. Early contracts ran about $80 to $90 million per mission. Recent ones have climbed past $180 million. That is the going rate for a delivery to the moon, and it's the closest thing this industry has to a published price list. Here's what that money has bought so far. In January 2024, Astrobotic's Peregrine lander sprang a fuel leak hours after launch and never reached the moon at all. A month later, Intuitive Machines landed Odysseus near the lunar South Pole, the first American landing since 1972, and the first ever by a private company. It tipped over on touchdown. In March 2025, the same company's second lander, Athena, also tipped over and went dark within hours. Japan's ISpace has crashed 2 landers 3 years apart, the first because its sensors mistook a crater rim for the surface, the second because of a faulty laser rangefinder that misjudged the altitude. Of the first 4 American commercial landing attempts, exactly one, Firefly Aerospace's Blue Ghost in March 2025, landed upright and completed its full mission. Read that record again. These are funded, contracted, professionally engineered missions, and the industry-wide success rate for simply arriving intact is roughly 1 in 4. Intuitive Machines, the most decorated company in the field, posted an operating loss of $67 million in 2024, in a year when it made history. On the moon, even winning loses money. That's the toll booth every lunar business plan has to pass through. Whatever you plan to extract up there, first you have to survive the last 3 minutes of the trip. Most machines don't, which leaves one question hanging over all of it. What could possibly be up there that's worth all this? Not gold, not diamonds. The honest answer is 2 substances, and neither of them sounds impressive. The first is ice. The second is a gas most people have never heard of. Start with the ice. The moon's south pole has craters where sunlight hasn't reached in billions of years, and those permanently shadowed floors hold water ice, hundreds of millions of tons of it by some estimates. On Earth, water is nearly free. On the moon, its value is set by an entirely different number: the cost of delivery. Launching a single kilogram of anything to the lunar surface runs tens of thousands of dollars. One published estimate puts a single gallon of water at $83,000 delivered. That means ice already sitting on the moon is worth roughly its weight in gold, purely because of where it is. And water isn't just for drinking. Split it with electricity, and 1 ton yields 890 kilograms of oxygen and 110 kilograms of hydrogen. That combination is rocket propellant. Whoever controls lunar ice isn't selling water, they're selling the gas station for the entire solar system. Then there's the gas. It's called helium-3, a rare isotope that Earth's magnetic field mostly blocks from reaching our planet. The moon has no magnetic field, so for 4 billion years, solar wind has been quietly embedding helium-3 into the lunar soil. The current market price is around $20 million per kilogram. And the demand isn't science fiction. Quantum computers have to be cooled to near absolute zero, and the refrigerators that do it run on helium-3. Every serious quantum computing lab on Earth needs it, and terrestrial supply is tiny. A Seattle startup called Interloon, founded by former Blue Origin executives and Harrison Schmitt, the Apollo 17 astronaut who was the last man to step onto the moon, plans to harvest it. In 2025, the U.S. Department of Energy agreed to buy 3 liters of lunar helium-3, the first government purchase of a natural resource from off the planet. Then the Finnish cryogenics firm Bluefors signed for up to 10,000 liters a year, a deal reported to be worth over $300 million. Here's the detail worth sitting with. Every liter of that gas is still on the moon. Nobody has extracted a single gram. Customers are signing 9-figure contracts for a substance that exists, so far, only as a concentration measured in parts per billion scattered through lunar dust. To collect meaningful amounts, Interloon's excavator is designed to chew through 100 metric tons of regolith per hour. Mining the moon means processing a small hillside to fill a party balloon. The only reason the math survives is that the balloon is worth $20 million a kilo. There's one more lunar commodity, and it trades on a market nobody advertises. Genuine Apollo moon rocks are illegal to sell. Every gram belongs to the U.S. government, which is precisely why federal sting operations have valued black market fragments at $1 to $5 million per gram. The moon's most liquid export so far is contraband. Now, before you wire money to a lander company, you should understand the three weaknesses of this business, because each one is capable of killing it. The first weakness is legal. The Artemis Accords, the American-led framework for lunar activity, reached 70 signatory nations in July 2026. The accords allow countries and companies to declare safety zones, buffer areas around their operations that others shouldn't interfere with. Notice what a safety zone around a mining site actually is. It's territory you can't own, surrounded by a perimeter you control. China and Russia have refused to sign, calling the framework land grabbing in disguise, and are building their own rival lunar program with their own partner nations. The moon is heading toward two legal systems on one surface, and no court exists to referee between them. The second weakness is technical, and you've already seen it. A 1 in 4 landing success rate means every business model has to price in the likelihood that the machine carrying your entire revenue plan becomes a crater. Insurance for this barely exists. The companies absorb the losses and fly again, mostly on NASA's dime. The third weakness is the market itself. Strip away the press releases, and nearly every dollar in this industry today comes from one customer: government space agencies, NASA's delivery contracts, the Energy Department's helium purchase, national space programs buying rides. The commercial customers, the quantum computing firms, are real, but they're paying for future delivery of material that has never once been successfully extracted. If those first extraction missions fail, the pre-sold market doesn't shrink. It evaporates. So let's pull it all together and answer the actual question. What does owning the moon pay? Run the numbers on the three realistic versions of this business. Version 1, sell the fantasy. Dennis Hope's approach. No rockets, no risk, no legal ownership, just paper. 4 decades of work, roughly $12 million. Real money, but a souvenir shop, not an empire. Version 2, sell the delivery. A lander company with NASA contracts books 80 to 180 million per mission, and the current champions of this business still lose tens of millions a year because building machines that survive the moon costs more than the moon pays. For now, version 3, sell the extraction. If Interlune's plan works, the company projects that a single installation of 5 harvesting machines could produce 10 kilograms of helium-3 a year. At market price, that's roughly $200 million annually, from 5 machines and a patch of dust. That's the version the whole industry is betting on, and it's the only version where the moon itself, not a government budget, is the source of the money. Zoom out and the projections get serious. PwC and others estimate the lunar economy could reach somewhere between $140 and $170 billion a year by 2040, built on transport, ice, data, and mining. Maybe those forecasts are inflated. Most forecasts are. But the direction is set because the legal precedent is set. It was set the day a government agency wrote a 10-cent check for a handful of dust and turned extraction into ownership. So here's the final scorecard, and it's the strangest one in this series. The man who sold the moon's land made $12 million and owns nothing. The companies buying the moon's future are spending billions, and most of their machines are lying on their sides in the dust because the moon was never for sale. It still isn't. The only thing anyone has ever truly owned up there is what they managed to carry away. And so far, the entire recorded export history of another world adds up to a few scoops of soil and a check for 10 cents. The deed to the moon costs $25. Owning any real piece of it starts at $100 million, plus a 3 in 4 chance of a crash. That's the actual price of the moon, not the land, the trip.